The Great Wall, a bedtime story for grown-ups. Close your eyes, dear listener, and let your breathing slow. Feel yourself sinking into the comfort of this moment as we journey together through time and mist to a land where dragons once danced in the clouds and emperors dreamed of walls that could touch the sky. In the gentle twilight of your imagination, picture a vast landscape painted in shades of amber and gold. The sun hangs low over ancient hills, casting long shadows that stretch like fingers across valleys dotted with small villages. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, carrying with it the scent of jasmine tea and evening meals shared by families gathered around wooden tables. This is China, 7 centuries before the birth of Christ, when the world was younger and dreams were built with earth and stone. Listen. Can you hear it? The soft whisper of wind through bamboo groves, the distant lowing of oxen returning from the fields, the gentle splash of water wheels turning in slow, eternal rhythms. In this peaceful evening light, it seems impossible to imagine that this serene landscape would soon become the birthplace of one of humanity's most extraordinary dreams, a dream of protection, of unity, of a barrier so magnificent that it would be visible from the heavens themselves. But let us begin not with walls, but with wanderers. Picture, if you will, the nomadic tribes of the northern steppes, horsemen wrapped in furs and leather, their faces weathered by endless winds. They moved like shadows across the grasslands, following the seasons and the herds, their lives as fluid as the rivers that carved the valleys. To them, borders were meaningless lines drawn by settled folk who had forgotten the freedom of the open sky. These wanderers brought both wonder and worry to the farming communities of ancient China. Sometimes they came as traders, their pack animals laden with precious furs, exotic spices, and stories from distant lands. Other times, when harsh winters made survival desperate, they came as raiders, sweeping down from the northern passes like autumn storms, taking what they needed before disappearing again into the vast emptiness of the steppes. And so, in the kingdoms that would one day become China, a dream began to take shape, not born from hatred, but from a deep human longing for security, for the ability to sleep peacefully under one's own roof. It was a dream that would span centuries, consume millions of lives, and create something so magnificent that it would outlast the very civilizations that built it.
Imagine, as you rest here in this quiet moment, the first earthen walls rising from the soil. These were not the massive stone fortifications that we know today, but humble barriers built by calloused hands from the very earth they sought to protect. Picture the farmers and villagers working together in the cool dawn light, passing baskets of earth and stone, their movements rhythmic and meditative, like a prayer made manifest in mud and sweat. The earliest walls were built not by emperors, but by communities, neighbors helping neighbors, each adding their strength to a shared vision of safety. They built with tamped earth, pressing the soil between wooden frames until it became hard as stone. Layer by layer, handful by handful, the barriers grew, following the natural contours of the land like a gentle embrace. These first walls were modest things, perhaps the height of a tall man, topped with thorny brambles or wooden stakes. They were not meant to stop armies, but to slow raiders, to give the village watchmen time to ring the warning bells, to allow families to gather their precious belongings and retreat to stronger places. In their simplicity, they held a profound truth, that protection comes not from the height of our walls, but from the strength of our unity. As centuries passed like seasons in an endless cycle, these small walls grew and multiplied. Different kingdoms built their own barriers, each reflecting the character of its people. Some were tall and proud, others low and cunning. Some followed straight lines drawn by military engineers, others curved like rivers, adapting to every hill and valley. Each wall told a story, whispered secrets of the hands that built it and the hearts that dreamed it into being. But the greatest chapter of our story begins with a man whose ambition was as vast as the sky itself. His name was Qin Shi Huang, and he would become the first emperor of a unified China. Picture him as a young prince standing on the battlements of his father's palace, gazing northward toward the endless steppes. In his mind, he saw not separate kingdoms with their own small walls, but a single great nation, protected by a barrier so magnificent that it would make the gods themselves pause in wonder. When Qin Shi Huang united the warring kingdoms under his rule in 221 BCE, he looked upon the patchwork of walls that crisscrossed his new empire and saw opportunity written in earth and stone. Some walls protected his former enemies. These would be torn down, their stones scattered to the winds. Others faced the northern threat. These would be connected, strengthened, transformed into something the world had never seen. The emperor's vision was breathtaking in its audacity. He dreamed of a single wall that would stretch across the entire northern frontier of his empire, a barrier thousands of miles long that would unite not just stones and mortar, but the very soul of his people. It would be more than a wall. It would be a statement written across the landscape itself, declaring to all the world that here stood a civilization worthy of the ages. And so began one of history's most remarkable undertakings. Picture the scene. Hundreds of thousands of workers streaming toward the northern frontier like rivers converging toward the sea. Among them were soldiers and peasants, craftsmen and prisoners, each carrying their own dreams and fears toward a destiny they could scarcely imagine. They came from every corner of the empire, speaking different dialects, following different customs, but united now in a single magnificent purpose. The general who would oversee this mighty work was Meng Tian, a man whose vision matched his emperor's in grandeur. He studied the existing walls with the eyes of an artist and the mind of an engineer, seeing how they could be woven together into a single, seamless barrier. Where walls already stood, they would be strengthened and heightened. Where gaps existed, new construction would bridge the distance. The result would be a great dragon of stone and earth coiling across the mountains and valleys of northern China. But let us pause here, dear listener, and consider the human cost of such dreams. For every stone placed, there was a man or woman who lifted it. For every mile completed, there were countless blisters and aching backs, countless moments of exhaustion when the work seemed impossible. The ancient histories tell us that hundreds of thousands died in the construction, their bones becoming part of the very foundation they helped to build. Yet, even in acknowledging this sorrow, we must remember that these were not merely victims of imperial ambition, but participants in humanity's endless struggle to create something greater than ourselves. Picture the moment when a section of wall was completed, when workers could stand atop their creation and see the landscape spread out below them like a painted scroll. In that moment, perhaps their exhaustion was transformed into something approaching wonder. The wall that emerged from their labors was unlike anything the world had ever seen. It was not a single uniform barrier, but a living thing that adapted to the landscape it protected. In the mountains, it climbed impossible heights, clinging to ridges like a dragon's spine. In the valleys, it stretched straight and strong, marked by watchtowers that rose like prayer flags against the sky. In the deserts, it became a ribbon of hope across endless expanses of sand and stone. The watchtowers deserve special mention in our bedtime tale, for they were more than mere military installations. They were beacons of human connectivity in a vast and lonely landscape. Picture the sentries who manned these towers, spending long nights gazing out at the darkness, their signal fires ready to carry messages faster than the swiftest horse.
These guardians of the wall lived lives of profound solitude and equally profound purpose. They watched the northern horizon for signs of danger, but they also watched the changing seasons paint the landscape in ever-shifting hues. They saw sunrise after sunrise, sunset after sunset, each one unique and beautiful. In their isolation, they became intimate with the rhythms of the natural world, understanding the language of wind and weather, of bird migration and star movement. The wall they protected was built with materials drawn from the earth itself. In areas where stone was plentiful, massive blocks were quarried and fitted together with the precision of master craftsmen. Each stone was shaped by hand, fitted to its neighbors with such care that no mortar was needed to hold them in place. The result was a surface so smooth and strong that it seemed to have grown naturally from the mountain itself. Where stone was scarce, builders turned to other materials. They used brick, fired in kilns that burned day and night, their smoke rising like incense toward the heavens. They used tamped earth, the ancient technique perfected by generations of wall builders, creating barriers as hard as concrete from nothing more than soil and patience. They used whatever the land provided, timber from mountain forests, reed bundles from river valleys, even the bones of animals when nothing else was available. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the Great Wall was not its materials, but its design. This was no simple barrier, but a sophisticated system of defense that reflected centuries of military wisdom. The wall itself was wide enough for 5 horses to ride abreast, allowing defenders to move quickly to any threatened point. The outer face was steep and smooth, impossible for attackers to climb, while the inner face was gentler, allowing defenders easy access to the top. Along the wall's length, barracks housed the soldiers who defended it, their quarters carved into the wall itself or built in its shadow. Storehouses held supplies of grain and weapons, ensuring that the wall could withstand long sieges. Stables sheltered the horses that carried messages and supplies, their hoofbeats echoing through stone corridors like heartbeats in the empire's chest. As our story unfolds through the centuries, we see the wall becoming more than a barrier. It became a living part of Chinese civilization. Farmers built their fields up to its base, their crops growing in its protective shadow. Merchants established trade routes that followed its path, their caravans finding safety in its watchtowers. Poets and artists drew inspiration from its majesty, creating works that celebrated both its grandeur and its melancholy. For there was always melancholy in the wall, a sadness that seemed to seep from its very stones. It was the sadness of separation, of dividing the world into us and them. It was the sadness of the families torn apart by its construction, of the workers who died far from home. It was the sadness of recognizing that even the mightiest barriers are, in the end, proof of our fear rather than our strength. Yet this melancholy was balanced by moments of transcendent beauty. Picture the wall in winter, its battlements crowned with snow, its watchtowers standing like ancient trees against a sky of pewter and pearl. The silence in such moments was complete, broken only by the whisper of wind through stone. In this silence, the wall seemed to become something more than human creation. It became part of the eternal landscape, as natural and necessary as the mountains themselves. As we continue our gentle journey through history, we must speak of the human stories that played out along the wall's length. Consider the soldiers who spent their lives manning its watchtowers, men who left their families and villages to serve on humanity's most remote frontier. They were farmers' sons and merchants' brothers, scholars who had failed their examinations, and young men seeking adventure in distant places. These soldiers developed their own culture, their own traditions and legends. They told stories around their evening fires of dragons that lived in the mountains, of spirits that walked the wall at night, of brave defenders who had sacrificed their lives to hold the barrier against impossible odds. They created songs that could be heard echoing from tower to tower on quiet nights, voices joining across the darkness in ancient melodies of home and longing. Some of these men spent decades on the wall, watching their hair turn gray as they gazed out at the northern wilderness. They learned the language of smoke signals and mirror flashes, could read the weather and the behavior of birds, knew every stone and crevice of their section as intimately as a lover knows the beloved's face. When they finally returned to their home villages, they carried with them a weight of experience that set them apart from those who had never seen the Great Barrier. The wall also became home to a different kind of guardian, the hermits and monks who found in its isolation the perfect environment for spiritual contemplation. Picture these holy men living in caves carved into the wall's foundation, or in small temples built in the shadow of its watchtowers. They rose before dawn to meditate as the sun painted the mountains gold, found enlightenment in the play of light and shadow across ancient stones. These spiritual guardians understood something that perhaps the emperors who built the wall had not fully grasped, that the greatest barriers are not made of stone and mortar, but of understanding and compassion. They taught that true security comes not from keeping others out, but from opening our hearts wide enough to embrace all beings. In their quiet presence, the wall became not just a military fortification, but a place of profound spiritual teaching. As centuries passed, the wall began to accumulate layers of meaning beyond its original purpose. Poets climbed to its highest points to write verses about the beauty and loneliness of the frontier. Artists painted scrolls showing its serpentine path through mountain and valley, its watchtowers standing like ancient sentinels against dramatic skies. The wall became a symbol of Chinese endurance and ingenuity, a source of national pride that transcended its military function. But the wall also became a symbol of separation and loss. Mothers sang lullabies about sons who went to build the wall and never returned. Wives waited years for husbands serving on its ramparts, their vigils becoming part of Chinese literature and legend. The wall that was meant to protect families had also become a cause of their separation, a bitter irony that poets and storytellers never tired of exploring. During the Qing dynasty, the last imperial dynasty of China, the wall gradually lost its military importance. The Qing emperors were themselves from beyond the wall, Manchus who had conquered China from the north. To them, the wall was not a protective barrier, but a reminder of old divisions they sought to heal. They allowed much of it to fall into disrepair, its stones taken by local farmers for building their own walls and houses. Yet, even in its decline, the wall retained its power to inspire. Western explorers and missionaries who encountered it in the 18th and 19th centuries wrote breathlessly of its grandeur, helping to spread its fame beyond China's borders. They compared it to the wonders of the ancient world, declared it the greatest work of human hands, and began the legend that it was visible from the moon, a claim that, though false, spoke to the wall's hold on the human imagination. Picture the wall during these centuries of neglect, sections crumbling back into the earth from which they came, watchtowers standing roofless against the sky, their stones scattered by weather and time. Wild animals made dens in the ruins, and hardy plants took root between the ancient blocks. In its decay,
the wall achieved a different kind of beauty, a melancholy grandeur that spoke of the impermanence of even humanity's mightiest works.
Local communities developed their own relationships with the abandoned sections. Farmers built their houses against the wall's warmth, used its stones for foundations and hearths. Children played in its ruins, creating new games and stories among the ancient stones. The wall became part of the landscape in a way its builders never intended, integrated into daily life not as a barrier, but as a familiar and beloved presence. The wall's transformation from military fortification to cultural symbol accelerated in the 20th century. As China struggled with foreign invasion and internal revolution, the wall became a potent reminder of the nation's strength and resilience. During the Japanese occupation of the 1930s and 1940s, Chinese resistance fighters used the wall's remote sections as hideouts and supply routes, turning the ancient defensive barrier into a tool of liberation. The establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949 brought new attention to the wall. The communist government recognized its value as a symbol of Chinese achievement and began programs to restore and preserve its most significant sections. What had been allowed to crumble for centuries was suddenly the focus of intensive archaeological and engineering efforts. This restoration work revealed the wall's secrets layer by layer. Archaeologists discovered that the wall was not a single structure, but a palimpsest of construction and reconstruction, with each dynasty leaving its mark on the ancient stones. They found evidence of the daily lives of its builders and defenders, pottery shards and coin fragments, weapons and tools, even graffiti carved into lonely soldiers into watchtower walls. The most famous section of the restored wall is at Badaling, north of Beijing. Picture this section as it appears today. Massive stone blocks fitted together with mathematical precision, broad enough for tourists to walk along its length, its watchtowers restored to its original grandeur. This is the wall that most visitors see, a masterpiece of Ming Dynasty engineering that seems to embody all the legends and stories that have grown up around the Great Barrier. But perhaps more moving are the unrestored sections, places where the wall exists much as it did during its centuries of abandonment. Here you can see how nature and human construction have learned to coexist. Trees grow from cracks in the ancient stones, their roots holding the structure together, even as they slowly break it apart. These sections whisper of time's passage in a way that perfectly restored monuments cannot. The wall's role in modern China extends far beyond tourism. It has become a metaphor for the Chinese character itself, enduring, patient, willing to work across generations to achieve great goals. During the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s and 1970s, when many traditional symbols were under attack, the wall somehow maintained its status as a source of national pride. Even the most radical revolutionaries could not bring themselves to condemn this magnificent achievement of Chinese civilization. In recent decades, as China has opened to the world, the wall has become a bridge rather than a barrier. Millions of international visitors come to walk its ancient stones, to marvel at its engineering and artistry. They return home with photographs and stories that spread appreciation for Chinese culture and history around the globe. The wall that once divided has become a means of connection. Modern technology has revealed new secrets about the wall's construction and extent. Satellite imagery has identified previously unknown sections hidden in remote mountains and deserts. Ground-penetrating radar has shown the foundations of walls thought to be completely destroyed. DNA analysis of mortar samples has revealed the organic materials used in construction, including the famous rice flour that gave Ming Dynasty mortar its legendary strength. These discoveries have also revealed the wall's true length, not the 1,500 miles often quoted in older sources, but nearly 13,000 miles when all the branches, secondary walls, and fortifications are included.
This figure encompasses not just the main barrier, but an entire system of defensive works built over more than 2 millennia. The wall, it turns out, is even more remarkable than anyone had imagined. But statistics, impressive as they are, cannot capture the wall's true significance. To understand what the Great Wall means, we must look beyond its physical dimensions to its spiritual and cultural impact. For more than 2,000 years, it has stood as humanity's most ambitious attempt to control space and time, to create a permanent boundary in a world of constant change. The wall embodies contradictions that mirror the human condition itself. It is a monument to both unity and division, showing how the same structure can bring people together, even as it keeps them apart. It represents both strength and vulnerability, demonstrating that even our mightiest works are subject to the slow erosion of time. It speaks of both hope and fear, revealing our eternal desire for security in an uncertain world.
In Chinese philosophy, the wall has come to represent the concept of boundaries themselves. Not just physical boundaries, but the psychological and spiritual boundaries that define our existence. Taoist philosophers have used it as a metaphor for the walls we build around our hearts, suggesting that true wisdom lies in knowing when to maintain these barriers and when to let them fall. Buddhist teachers have found in the wall a different lesson, seeing it as an example of the impermanence that governs all human creations. No matter how solid the stones, how careful the construction, time will eventually reclaim every human work. The wall's partial ruins serve as a reminder that attachment to permanence is the source of suffering, and the true peace comes from accepting the constant flow of change. Confucian scholars have interpreted the wall as a symbol of good governance, arguing that a ruler's true strength lies not in the height of his walls, but in the welfare of his people. They point out that the wall succeeded only when the dynasty that built it was strong and unified, and failed when corruption and weakness undermined the state from within. The strongest barrier is a well-governed society. Western visitors to the wall often find themselves thinking about their own culture's relationships with boundaries and barriers. In an age of global communication and travel, the wall serves as a reminder of humanity's long history of division and separation. Yet it also demonstrates our equally long history of overcoming these divisions through trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. Artists and writers from around the world have found inspiration in the wall's majestic sweep across the Chinese landscape. They see in it a canvas for exploring themes of ambition and hubris, of the relationship between humanity and nature, of the ways in which our greatest achievements can also be our greatest follies. The wall has appeared in countless paintings, poems, novels, and films, each interpretation adding new layers to its meaning. Environmental scientists studying the wall have discovered that it has become an inadvertent wildlife corridor, its length providing habitat for numerous species of plants and animals. Birds nest in its watchtowers, small mammals den in its foundations, and hardy plants thrive in the microclimate created by its stones. The barrier built to exclude has become a haven for life. Climate researchers have found that the wall creates its own weather patterns, affecting wind flow and precipitation across northern China. Its stones absorb heat during the day and radiate it at night, creating temperature variations that influence local ecosystems. The wall has become part of the natural landscape in ways its builders never intended. Archaeologists continue to make discoveries that illuminate the daily lives of the wall's builders and defenders. They have found evidence of sophisticated supply networks that kept workers fed and equipped, of medical care provided to the injured, of recreational activities that helped soldiers endure their isolated postings. The wall was not just a military installation, but a complete society stretched across thousands of miles. Recent excavations have revealed the graves of workers who died during construction, their bones providing evidence of the physical toll exacted by this monumental project. Yet these same excavations have also found evidence of care and respect for the dead. Proper burial practices, grave goods, inscriptions honoring the deceased.
Even in death, the wall builders were part of a community that valued their sacrifice. The wall's watchtowers have yielded particularly rich archaeological treasures. These structures served not just as military posts, but as libraries, workshops, and social centers. Archaeologists have found books and scrolls, tools and artwork, games and musical instruments. The defenders of the wall maintained rich cultural lives even in their isolation. Modern conservation efforts face the challenge of preserving the wall while allowing public access. Millions of visitors each year climb its stones, wearing them smooth with their footsteps. Engineers and archaeologists work together to find ways to protect the ancient structure while keeping it available for future generations to experience and appreciate. Digital technology is creating new ways to experience the wall. Virtual reality tours allow people around the world to walk its length without physical travel. 3D mapping creates detailed records of its construction that will survive even if the original stones eventually crumble. The wall is being transformed from a physical structure into a digital monument that can exist in cyberspace as well as in the mountains of northern China. The wall has also become a symbol in discussions about modern barriers and boundaries. In an age of border walls and immigration debates, the Great Wall serves as both inspiration and warning. It demonstrates humanity's capacity for monumental achievement while also illustrating the limitations of physical barriers in addressing complex social and political challenges. Educational programs based on the wall teach students about engineering and architecture, about history and culture, about the environment and archaeology. The wall has become a multidisciplinary classroom where learners can explore connections between past and present, between human ambition and natural forces, between individual effort and collective achievement. The wall's influence on Chinese identity continues to evolve. For modern Chinese people, it represents both the glory of their civilization and the weight of their history. It is a source of pride and a reminder of responsibility, a symbol of what can be achieved through unity and determination, and also a warning about the costs of grand ambitions. International scholars studying the wall have contributed to a global understanding of its significance. They have compared it to other great barriers throughout history: Hadrian's Wall in Britain, the Berlin Wall in Germany, the walls of medieval cities, and found common threads in humanity's relationship with boundaries and barriers. The Great Wall has become part of a worldwide conversation about separation and connection. The wall's influence on literature continues to grow. Contemporary authors use it as a setting for stories that explore themes of isolation and community, tradition and change, East and West. It has become a character in its own right, a presence that shapes the narratives built around it. The wall that once controlled the movement of armies now influences the flow of ideas and imagination. Musicians have also found inspiration in the wall's majesty and melancholy. Composers have written symphonies that attempt to capture its grandeur in sound, while folk musicians have created songs that tell the stories of its builders and defenders. The wall has become part of the world's musical heritage, its rhythms echoing in concert halls and around campfires. Photography and film have made the wall one of the world's most recognizable landmarks. Images of its serpentine path through mountain landscapes have become iconic, representing not just China, but humanity's relationship with the natural world. Each photograph tells a story about time and permanence, about the scale of human ambition relative to the vastness of the earth. The wall has also become a pilgrimage destination for people seeking personal transformation. Visitors often describe walking its length as a meditative experience, a chance to reflect on their own life journeys while following the path of this ancient structure. The physical challenge of climbing its steep sections becomes a metaphor for overcoming personal obstacles. Sunrise and sunset at the wall are particularly moving experiences. Picture the first light of dawn touching the ancient stones, revealing the mist-wrapped mountains stretching to the horizon. Or imagine the last light of evening painting the watchtowers gold and crimson, while stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. In these moments, the wall seems less like a human construction than a natural feature of the landscape. The changing seasons bring different aspects of the wall's beauty into focus. Spring reveals wildflowers blooming among the ruins, their delicate colors contrasting with the weathered stone. Summer brings lush vegetation to the wall's surroundings, creating a ribbon of green that follows its course. Autumn paints the landscape in brilliant reds and golds, while winter transforms the wall into a stark, dramatic silhouette against snow-covered peaks. Local communities near the wall have developed traditions and festivals that celebrate their unique heritage. These celebrations often include performances that recreate the lives of ancient defenders, traditional foods prepared according to recipes passed down through generations, and crafts that use techniques developed by the wall's builders. The wall continues to be a living part of Chinese culture. 82. The economic impact of the wall extends far beyond tourism. The industries that support wall conservation and visitor services provide employment for thousands of people. Research related to the wall contributes to advances in archaeology, engineering, and material science. The wall has become an engine of modern economic development, as well as a monument to ancient achievement. 83. International cooperation in wall preservation has created partnerships between Chinese institutions and organizations around the world. These collaborations share expertise and resources, ensuring that the wall's conservation benefits from the latest scientific knowledge and technological innovations. The wall has become a bridge between cultures, united in their commitment to preserving human heritage. 84. The wall's role in popular culture continues to expand. It appears in video games and virtual worlds, where players can explore its length and learn about its history. It features in movies and television shows as both setting and symbol. Children around the world learn about the wall in school, making it one of the first encounters many people have with Chinese civilization. 85. Space exploration has given the wall new significance as a symbol of human achievement visible from orbit. While it's not actually visible to the naked eye from space, despite the persistent legend, satellite images of the wall have become powerful symbols of humanity's ability to shape the Earth's surface. The wall connects us to both our earthbound heritage and our cosmic aspirations. 86. The wall's future remains bright despite the challenges of conservation and climate change. New technologies promise to help preserve its stones and timbers for future generations. Educational programs ensure that its history and significance will be passed on to new generations of students and scholars. The wall that has endured for more than 2 millennia shows every sign of lasting for many more. 87. As we near the end of our bedtime journey along the Great Wall, let us pause to consider what this magnificent structure teaches us about the human spirit. It shows us that we are capable of achievements that transcend individual lifetimes, that we can work together across generations to create something truly lasting. It demonstrates that even our greatest fears can inspire our greatest accomplishments. The wall also teaches us about the relationship between humanity and nature. It shows how human constructions can become part of the natural landscape, how barriers built for division can become habitats for life. It reminds us that we are not separate from the natural world, but part of it, and that our greatest works succeed when they honor rather than fight against natural forces. In its stones, we can read the story of human civilization itself, our endless capacity for both creation and destruction, for unity and division. The wall embodies our deepest contradictions, our desire for security and our need for connection, our fear of the other and our capacity for inclusion, our awareness of mortality and our hope for immortality. The wall speaks to the artist in each of us, inspiring us to create works that will outlast our individual lives. It speaks to the engineer, showing what can be achieved through careful planning and persistent effort. It speaks to the philosopher, raising eternal questions about boundaries and barriers, protection and freedom. It reminds the dreamer that even the most impossible visions can become reality when pursued with dedication and love.
As you lie here in the gentle darkness, imagine yourself walking along the wall in the quiet hour before dawn. Your footsteps echo softly on the ancient stones, each step connecting you to the millions who have walked this path before you. The air is cool and sweet, carrying the scent of mountain flowers and the distant sound of a stream flowing through the valley below.
Feel the rough texture of the stones beneath your fingers as you steady yourself against the parapet. These stones have felt the touch of emperors and peasants, soldiers and poets, pilgrims and wanderers. Each block carries within it the dreams and struggles of those who shaped it, lifted it, fitted it into place with such care that it has endured for centuries beyond their lifetimes. In the growing light, you can see the wall stretching ahead of you like a great river of stone, flowing with the contours of the mountains, disappearing into morning mist, only to emerge again on distant peaks. It is both finite and infinite, bounded by its beginning and end, yet somehow extending beyond the limits of sight and imagination into the realm of eternal things. The watchtowers stand like ancient guardians, their weathered faces turned toward horizons that have witnessed the rise and fall of dynasties, the passage of armies, the quiet revolution of seasons. In their silence, they hold the memories of all who served here, the lonely vigils, the moments of terror, the long, peaceful years when nothing disturbed the mountain quiet except the cry of eagles and the whisper of wind through stone. As the sun rises higher, the wall begins to reveal its hidden life. Tiny flowers bloom in cracks between the stones, their delicate petals a testament to life's determination to flourish even in the most unlikely places. Lizards bask on sun-warmed stones, and high above, hawks circle on thermals that rise from the wall's ancient masonry. This is the wall's greatest lesson, that even structures built for division and protection can become sources of beauty and life. The barrier that once separated peoples has become a bridge across time, connecting us to our shared human heritage. The wall that was built from fear has become a monument to hope, showing us what we can achieve when we unite our individual strengths in service of a noble purpose. Think of the children who will walk these stones in centuries to come, their eyes wide with wonder as they try to imagine the hands that built this marvel. They will ask the same questions that have echoed through history. How did they move such massive stones? How did they work in such difficult terrain? What drove them to attempt something so ambitious, so seemingly impossible? The answers lie not in the stones themselves, but in the human spirit that moved them. The Great Wall exists because people believed in something greater than themselves, a shared future, a common safety, a civilization worth protecting. It stands as proof that when we unite our individual strengths in service of a noble purpose, we can accomplish miracles that echo through eternity. As you continue your imaginary journey along the wall, notice how it changes with the landscape it protects. In the mountains, it climbs impossible heights, each stone placed with the precision of a master craftsman. In the valleys, it stretches straight and strong, a reminder of human determination to impose order on the chaos of the world. In the deserts, it becomes a lifeline of shade and shelter, a ribbon of hope across the vastness. The wall teaches us about persistence, not the harsh, grinding persistence of mere stubbornness, but the gentle, flowing persistence of water that shapes mountains over millennia. Generation after generation of builders added their stones to the growing structure, each knowing they would not live to see its completion, yet each contributing their part to the eternal work. This is perhaps the wall's most profound gift to our modern world, the reminder that meaningful work transcends individual lifetimes. In an age of instant gratification and rapid change, the wall stands as a monument to the power of patient, sustained effort. It shows us that the most important human achievements are those that we begin for others to complete. As the morning advances and the sun climbs higher in the sky, the wall begins to shimmer in the heat like a mirage made solid. From your vantage point on its broad top, you can see the patchwork of fields and villages that it has protected for so many centuries. Farmers tend their crops in the fertile valleys, their movements as rhythmic and eternal as the seasons themselves. Feel the rough texture of the stones beneath your fingers as you steady yourself against the parapet. These stones have felt the touch of emperors and peasants, soldiers and poets, pilgrims and wanderers. Each block carries within it the dreams and struggles of those who shaped it, lifted it, fitted it into place with such care that it has endured for centuries beyond their lifetimes. In the growing light, you can see the wall stretching ahead of you like a great river of stone, flowing with the contours of the mountains, disappearing into morning mist, only to emerge again on distant peaks. It is both finite and infinite, bounded by its beginning and end, yet somehow extending beyond the limits of sight and imagination into the realm of eternal things. The watchtowers stand like ancient guardians, their weathered faces turned toward horizons that have witnessed the rise and fall of dynasties, the passage of armies, the quiet revolution of seasons. In their silence, they hold the memories of all who served here, the lonely vigils, the moments of terror, the long, peaceful years when nothing disturbed the mountain quiet except the cry of eagles and the whisper of wind through stone. As the sun rises higher, the wall begins to reveal its hidden life. Tiny flowers bloom in cracks between the stones, their delicate petals a testament to life's determination to flourish even in the most unlikely places. Lizards bask on sun-warmed stones, and high above, hawks circle on thermals that rise from the wall's ancient masonry. This is the wall's greatest lesson, that even structures built for division and protection can become sources of beauty and life. The barrier that once separated peoples has become a bridge across time, connecting us to our shared human heritage. The wall that was built from fear has become a monument to hope, showing us what we can achieve when we unite our individual strengths in service of a noble purpose. Think of the children who will walk these stones in centuries to come, their eyes wide with wonder as they try to imagine the hands that built this marvel. They will ask the same questions that have echoed through history. How did they move such massive stones? How did they work in such difficult terrain? What drove them to attempt something so ambitious, so seemingly impossible? The answers lie not in the stones themselves, but in the human spirit that moved them. The Great Wall exists because people believed in something greater than themselves, a shared future, a common safety, a civilization worth protecting. It stands as proof that when we unite our individual strengths in service of a noble purpose, we can accomplish miracles that echo through eternity. As you continue your imaginary journey along the wall, notice how it changes with the landscape it protects. In the mountains, it climbs impossible heights, each stone placed with the precision of a master craftsman. In the valleys, it stretches straight and strong, a reminder of human determination to impose order on the chaos of the world. In the deserts, it becomes a lifeline of shade and shelter, a ribbon of hope across the vastness. The wall teaches us about persistence, not the harsh, grinding persistence of mere stubbornness, but the gentle, flowing persistence of water that shapes mountains over millennia. Generation after generation of builders added their stones to the growing structure, each knowing they would not live to see its completion, yet each contributing their part to the eternal work. This is perhaps the wall's most profound gift to our modern world, the reminder that meaningful work transcends individual lifetimes. In an age of instant gratification and rapid change, the wall stands as a monument to the power of patient, sustained effort. It shows us that the most important human achievements are those that we begin for others to complete. As the morning advances and the sun climbs higher in the sky, the wall begins to shimmer in the heat like a mirage made solid. From your vantage point on its broad top, you can see the patchwork of fields and villages that it has protected for so many centuries. Farmers tend their crops in the fertile valleys, their movements as rhythmic and eternal as the seasons themselves.
In this darkness, it becomes easier to imagine the wall as its builders experienced it, not as a tourist destination or historical monument, but as a living workplace where real people carried out their daily tasks. You could almost hear the voices of ancient workers calling to one another across the darkness, the scrape of tools against stone, the creak of wooden scaffolding, and the rumble of ox carts bringing supplies. These nighttime hours were when the wall's defenders were most alert, when the possibility of attack seemed most real. Picture the sentries at their posts, eyes straining to catch any movement in the darkness below, ears tuned to every sound that might signal danger. Their vigilance protected not just the physical barrier, but the peace of mind of all who slept safely in its shelter. The wall at night also became a place of contemplation and spiritual reflection. Soldiers off duty would climb to the highest watchtowers to gaze at the stars, finding in their eternal patterns a sense of perspective on their own brief lives. Buddhist and Taoist monks would use the wall's isolation for meditation, finding in its stone embrace the perfect environment for inner exploration. As you stand on the wall under the starlit sky, you become part of this ancient tradition of night watchers and stargazers. The same constellations that guided ancient Chinese astronomers wheel overhead, their patterns unchanged despite the passage of millennia. In their light, the wall becomes not just a human construction, but part of the cosmic order itself. The moon, when it rises above the mountains, transforms the wall yet again. Moonlight turns the ancient stones to silver, creating shadows that shift and dance with the changing angle of illumination. In this ethereal light, the wall seems less solid than magical, a fairy tale construction that might disappear with the dawn. Generations of poets have written about the wall in moonlight, finding in its silver beauty a reflection of life's fleeting nature. The moon that illuminates it tonight is the same moon that shone on the wall's first builders, the same moon that will shine on its last stones when human civilization has passed into memory. In its light, we see both continuity and change, permanence and transience. As the night deepens and you continue your journey along the moonlit wall, you begin to understand that this structure is more than the sum of its stones. It is a repository of human dreams and fears, hopes and sorrows. Every block contains not just limestone and granite, but the aspirations of the people who placed it there. Every watchtower holds not just empty air, but the spirits of those who kept watch through countless dark hours. The wall is, in the deepest sense, a work of art, perhaps humanity's greatest sculpture, carved not from a single block, but from the living landscape itself. Like all great art, it means different things to different people, reflecting back their own experiences and understanding. To some, it represents strength and security. To others, division and oppression. To many, it embodies both simultaneously, acknowledging the complex nature of human motivation. This complexity is part of the wall's enduring fascination. Unlike simple monuments that celebrate only victory or beauty, the wall encompasses the full range of human experience. It speaks of triumph and tragedy, of noble vision and terrible cost, of the ability to create and the tendency to destroy. In its stones, we see ourselves reflected in all our contradictory glory. As dawn approaches and the eastern sky begins to lighten, the wall prepares for another transformation. The silver beauty of moonlight gives way to the pearl and rose of early morning, and once again the ancient stones prepare to greet the sun. This daily cycle of light and shadow, warmth and coolness, has continued for more than 2,000 years, marking time's passage with rhythmic precision.
As dawn approaches and the eastern sky begins to lighten, the wall prepares for another transformation. The silver beauty of moonlight gives way to the pearl and rose of early morning, and once again the ancient stones prepare to greet the sun. This daily cycle of light and shadow, warmth and coolness, has continued for more than 2,000 years, marking time's passage with rhythmic precision. In these quiet moments before sunrise, the wall seems to hold its breath, poised between night and day, between past and future. It is a moment of perfect balance when the weight of history seems suspended and anything seems possible. In this silence, you can almost hear the wall itself speaking, sharing its accumulated wisdom with those patient enough to listen. What does the wall say in these whispered moments? It speaks of the power of human cooperation, of what can be achieved when people unite around a common purpose. It tells of the importance of patience and persistence, of the willingness to begin work that others will complete. It reminds us that the greatest achievements are often the result not of individual brilliance, but of collective effort sustained across generations. The wall also speaks of the relationship between humanity and nature, showing how human constructions can enhance rather than destroy the natural landscape. It has become home to countless species of plants and animals, proving that even our most ambitious projects can coexist with the natural world when designed with wisdom and respect. As the first light of dawn touches the eastern peaks, the wall begins to glow with soft, warm light. The stones that seemed cold and gray in the darkness now reveal their true colors. Warm browns and golden yellows, subtle greens and blues that reflect the minerals from which they were formed. The wall awakens with the sun, becoming once again a thing of earthly beauty and human pride. This daily resurrection is perhaps the most moving aspect of the wall's existence. Despite its age, despite the centuries of weathering and partial ruin, it continues to greet each new day with dignity and grace. It reminds us that renewal is always possible, that even the most ancient structures can find new life and new meaning as circumstances change. The wall at sunrise also speaks to our own capacity for renewal. Just as its stones are transformed by each day's light, we too can be transformed by new experiences and fresh perspectives. The wall that seems so permanent and unchanging
is actually in constant flux, its appearance and meaning shifting with the light, the seasons, and the eyes that behold it. As full daylight returns and your imaginary journey along the wall continues, you begin to see other visitors appearing on the distant sections, early risers who have come to experience the wall in the quiet morning hours before the crowds arrive. They move slowly and respectfully, understanding that they are walking on sacred ground, treading paths worn smooth by millions of footsteps across the centuries. These modern pilgrims come from every corner of the earth, drawn by the wall's universal appeal. They speak different languages and practice different customs, but they share a common sense of wonder at this magnificent achievement. In their diversity, they reflect the wall's role as a bridge between cultures, a place where all humanity can find common ground. Watch how they interact with the wall. Some running their hands along the ancient stones, others sitting quietly to absorb the atmosphere. Still others taking photographs to share with friends and family back home. Each finds their own way to connect with this monument to human achievement, adding their own brief moment to the wall's long history of human encounter. Children are particularly wonderful to observe at the wall. Their eyes wide with wonder, they ask endless questions about how it was built, why it was built, who lived in the watchtowers. They climb eagerly up the steep sections, racing ahead of their parents with the boundless energy of youth. In their excitement, they embody the wall's power to inspire and educate new generations. The wall has become one of humanity's greatest classrooms, teaching lessons that extend far beyond history and architecture.
137. International school groups often make pilgrimages to the wall, their teachers using this magnificent structure to illustrate concepts that might otherwise remain abstract. Wholeheartedness as a defensive strategy. How individual effort contributes to collective achievement. 138. The wall also serves as a powerful venue for cultural exchange. Visitors from different countries find themselves sharing the same sense of awe, the same respect for the achievement it represents. Language barriers seem less important when standing before something so obviously significant, so clearly deserving of universal admiration. 139. Educational programs based at the wall have pioneered new approaches to experiential learning. Students don't just read about ancient construction techniques, they try their hand at moving stones and mixing mortar using traditional methods. They don't just study military history, they experience the challenges of communication across vast distances using signal fires and drums. 140. These hands-on experiences create lasting memories and deep understanding that no textbook could provide. Students who have built a section of wall using ancient techniques never forget the physical effort required, the importance of teamwork, the satisfaction of seeing their work take shape stone by stone. They carry these lessons with them throughout their lives, applying them to challenges far removed from construction and engineering. 141. The wall's educational impact extends beyond formal schooling to lifelong learning. Adult visitors often report that walking the wall changed their perspective on what's possible, inspired them to attempt their own ambitious projects, or simply reminded them of the importance of perseverance in the face of difficulty. 142. Business leaders study the wall as a case study in project management, marveling at the logistics required to coordinate work across such vast distances with the communication technologies available at the time. Engineers examine its construction techniques, finding principles that remain relevant to modern architecture and civil engineering.
Artists and designers draw inspiration from the wall's integration with the natural landscape, its use of local materials, its adaptation to varying terrain. The wall demonstrates that the most successful human constructions are those that work with rather than against natural forces, that enhance rather than dominate their surroundings. 144. Environmental scientists studying the wall have made remarkable discoveries about its ecological impact. Far from being a barrier to wildlife, the wall has become a corridor for species migration, its length providing habitat that connects otherwise fragmented ecosystems. Plants and animals have adapted to life along the wall, creating unique communities that exist nowhere else. 145. The wall's role as an inadvertent nature preserve has led to new approaches in conservation biology. Scientists now understand that linear structures like walls and roads can serve positive ecological functions when properly designed and managed. The ancient Chinese builders, working purely from practical considerations, created what modern ecologists would recognize as a greenway centuries before the concept was formally developed. 146. Climate researchers have found that the wall affects local weather patterns, creating microclimates that support diverse plant communities. Its stones absorb solar radiation during the day and release it at night, moderating temperature swings in its immediate vicinity. These effects, multiplied across the wall's vast length, have subtle but measurable impacts on regional climate patterns. 147. Archaeological research along the wall continues to yield new insights into ancient Chinese civilization. Excavations of watchtowers and barracks have revealed details about daily life on the frontier, what soldiers ate, how they spent their leisure time, what personal possessions they valued enough to carry to these remote postings. 148. These archaeological discoveries humanize the wall story, reminding us that behind every stone stood a real person with hopes and fears, dreams and disappointments. The wall was not built by abstract historical forces, but by individuals who got up each morning, ate their breakfast, and went to work moving stones and mixing mortar. 149. Recent excavations have uncovered evidence of the sophisticated supply networks that supported wall construction. Archaeologists have found remains of roads and waterways built specifically to transport materials to construction sites, evidence of workshops where tools were manufactured and repaired, and traces of the temporary cities that housed workers during major building campaigns. 150. These discoveries paint a picture of ancient China as a civilization capable of remarkable organizational feats. The wall was not built in isolation, but as part of a comprehensive infrastructure project that required unprecedented coordination across vast distances. It demonstrates the administrative sophistication of ancient Chinese government and the advanced state of Chinese logistics and engineering. 151. Modern conservation efforts strive to balance preservation with accessibility, ensuring that future generations can experience the wall while protecting it from the wear caused by millions of annual visitors. Advanced materials science contributes new techniques for stabilizing ancient masonry, while digital documentation creates permanent records of the wall's current condition. 152. International cooperation in wall preservation has created partnerships between Chinese institutions and organizations worldwide. These collaborations share expertise and resources, ensuring that the wall's conservation benefits from the latest scientific knowledge and technological innovations. The wall has become a bridge between cultures, united in their commitment to preserving human heritage. 153. Technology is also creating new ways to experience the wall. Virtual reality tours allow people who cannot travel to China to walk its length in immersive detail. Augmented reality applications provide visitors with historical information overlaid on their real-time view of the structure. Digital archives make ancient documents and artifacts related to the wall available to researchers worldwide.
154. The wall's influence on contemporary art and literature continues to grow. Modern artists use it as a canvas for exploring themes of connection and separation, permanence and change, East and West. Writers draw on its rich symbolism to illuminate contemporary issues, finding in its ancient stones reflections of modern concerns about borders, identity, and belonging. 155. Music inspired by the wall ranges from traditional Chinese compositions that attempt to capture its majesty and sound to contemporary works that use its symbolism to explore modern themes. Composers have written pieces that follow the wall's geographical path, creating musical journeys that parallel the physical experience of walking its length. 156. The wall appears regularly in popular culture, films, television shows, video games, and novels that use its iconic status to anchor their narratives in recognizable grandeur. These representations, while sometimes historically inaccurate, serve to keep the wall present in global consciousness and introduce it to new generations of admirers. 157. Social media has given the wall new life as one of the world's most photographed and shared landmarks. Images of sunrise over the wall, of its serpentine path through mountain landscapes, of visitors posing with its ancient stones circle the globe instantly, spreading appreciation for its beauty and significance to audiences that previous generations could never have imagined. 158. The wall's status as a UNESCO World Heritage Site has formalized its recognition as part of humanity's common heritage. This designation brings both honor and responsibility, acknowledging the wall's universal value while committing the international community to its preservation for future generations. 159. The wall's economic impact reveal its importance to modern China's tourism industry and its role in cultural diplomacy. The wall attracts millions of international visitors annually, generating significant economic activity while serving as an ambassador for Chinese culture and history. It demonstrates how ancient monuments can become engines of modern economic development. 160. The wall's role in China's national identity continues to evolve as the country takes its place as a global superpower. For modern Chinese people, it represents both the glory of their civilization and their connection to a cultural heritage that spans millennia. It serves as a source of pride and a reminder of what can be achieved through unity and determination. 161. International visitors to the wall often find themselves reflecting on their own culture's relationships with boundaries and barriers. In an age of global communication and travel, the wall serves as a tangible reminder of humanity's long history of division, while also demonstrating our equally long history of overcoming these divisions through trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. 162. The wall has become a symbol in contemporary discussions about immigration, border security, and globalization. Politicians and commentators invoke it both as an example of successful barrier construction and as a reminder of the limitations of physical walls in addressing complex social and political challenges. These debates ensure that the wall remains relevant to contemporary discourse. 163. As our bedtime journey along the wall draws toward a close, let us pause to reflect on the personal lessons this magnificent structure offers to each of us. The wall teaches us about the power of persistence, showing how great achievements result from sustained effort over time. It reminds us that the most meaningful work often extends beyond our individual lifetimes, requiring faith in outcomes we may never see. 164. The wall also teaches us about the importance of vision, not just the ability to imagine great things, but the wisdom to understand what is truly worth building. The emperors who commissioned the wall were motivated by a desire to protect their people and preserve their way of life.
While their methods may seem harsh by modern standards, their underlying purpose, the creation of security and stability for their civilization, remains worthy of respect. 165. In its adaptation to the natural landscape, the wall teaches us about the importance of working with, rather than against, the forces that shape our world. The most successful sections of the wall are those that follow natural contours, that use local materials, that integrate rather than dominate their surroundings. This lesson applies far beyond construction to all human endeavors. 166. The wall's survival through centuries of political upheaval and social change teaches us about the enduring power of human creativity and craftsmanship. Works built with skill, dedication, and respect for materials and environment have a resilience that transcends the circumstances of their creation. They speak to universal human values that outlast particular cultures that gave them birth.
167. Perhaps most importantly, the wall teaches us about our connection to one another across time and space. Every person who has ever walked its stones becomes part of its story, adding their own brief chapter to its endless narrative. We are connected to its ancient builders through the simple act of placing our feet where theirs once trod, of running our hands along stones they shaped and positioned with such care. 168. The wall's influence on contemporary art and literature continues to grow. Modern artists use it as a canvas for exploring themes of connection and separation, permanence and change, east and west. Writers draw on its rich symbolism to illuminate contemporary issues, finding in its ancient stones reflections of modern concerns about borders, identity, and belonging. 155. The wall's influence on contemporary art and literature continues to grow. Modern artists use it as a canvas for exploring themes of connection and separation, permanence and change, east and west. Writers draw on its rich symbolism to illuminate contemporary issues, finding in its ancient stones reflections of modern concerns about borders, identity, and belonging. 156. The wall's influence on contemporary art and literature continues to grow. Modern artists use it as a canvas for exploring themes of connection and separation, permanence and change, east and west. Writers draw on its rich symbolism to illuminate contemporary issues, finding in its ancient stones reflections of modern concerns about borders, identity, and belonging. 157. The wall's influence on contemporary art and literature continues to grow. Modern artists use it as a canvas for exploring themes of connection and separation, permanence and change, east and west. Writers draw on its rich symbolism to illuminate contemporary issues, finding in its ancient stones reflections of modern concerns about borders, identity, and belonging. 158. The wall's influence on contemporary art and literature continues to grow. Modern artists use it as a canvas for exploring themes of connection and separation, permanence and change, east and west. Writers draw on its rich symbolism to illuminate contemporary issues, finding in its ancient stones reflections of modern concerns about borders, identity, and belonging. 159. As our bedtime journey along the wall draws toward its close, let us pause to reflect on the personal lessons this magnificent structure offers to each of us. The wall teaches us about the power of persistence, showing how great achievements result from sustained effort over time. It reminds us that the most meaningful work often extends beyond our individual lifetimes, requiring faith in outcomes we may never see. 160. The wall also teaches us about the importance of vision, not just the ability to imagine great things, but the wisdom to understand what is truly worth building. The emperors who commissioned the wall were motivated by a desire to protect their people and preserve their way of life. While their methods may seem harsh by modern standards, their underlying purpose, the creation of security and stability for their civilization remains worthy of respect. 161. In its adaptation to the natural landscape, the wall teaches us about the importance of working with rather than against the forces that shape our world. The most successful sections of the wall are those that follow natural contours, that use local materials, that integrate with rather than dominate their surroundings. This lesson applies far beyond construction to all human endeavors. 162. The wall's survival through centuries of political upheaval and social change teaches us about the enduring power of human creativity and craftsmanship. Works built with skill, dedication, and respect for materials and environment have a resilience that transcends the circumstances of their creation. They speak to universal human values that outlast the particular cultures that gave them birth. 163. The wall's survival through centuries of political upheaval and social change teaches us about the enduring power of human creativity and craftsmanship. Works built with skill, dedication, and respect for materials and environment have a resilience that transcends the circumstances of their creation. They speak to universal human values that outlast the particular cultures that gave them birth. 164. As our bedtime journey along the wall draws toward its close, let us pause to reflect on the personal lessons this magnificent structure offers to each of us. The wall teaches us about the power of persistence, showing how great achievements result from sustained effort over time. It reminds us that the most meaningful work often extends beyond our individual lifetimes, requiring faith in outcomes we may never see. 165. In its adaptation to the natural landscape, the wall teaches us about the importance of working with rather than against the forces that shape our world. The most successful sections of the wall are those that follow natural contours, that use local materials, that integrate with rather than dominate their surroundings. This lesson applies far beyond construction to all human endeavors. 166. The wall's survival through centuries of political upheaval and social change teaches us about the enduring power of human creativity and craftsmanship. Works built with skill, dedication, and respect for materials and environment have a resilience that transcends the circumstances of their creation. They speak to universal human values that outlast the particular cultures that gave them birth. 189. As you imagine yourself completing your nighttime journey along the wall, the eastern sky begins to lighten with the approaching dawn. The stars fade gradually, replaced by the soft colors of morning, pearl and rose, gold and blue. The wall that seemed so ethereal in moonlight begins to regain its solid earthly presence as the sun approaches the horizon. 170. This daily transformation from night to day, which you have witnessed in your imagination, has occurred more than 800,000 times since the wall's completion. Each sunrise has brought new light to the ancient stones, new possibilities for those who walk its path, new chapters in its continuing story. The wall that seems so permanent and unchanging is actually in constant flux, its meaning and significance evolving with each passing day. 171. In the growing light, you can see the full majesty of the wall's serpentine path across the landscape. It rises and falls with the mountains, curves around obstacles, adapts its form to the terrain it crosses. This flexibility, this willingness to bend rather than break, is perhaps its secret of survival. The wall endures not because it's rigid, but because it's adaptable. 172. As the sun finally crests the eastern peaks, flooding the landscape with golden light, the wall awakens to another day. The ancient stones warm in the sunlight, beginning another cycle of expansion and contraction that has continued for centuries. Birds that roosted in the watchtowers through the night emerge to begin their daily search for food. The wall that seems so still and silent in the darkness reveals itself to be alive with quiet activity. 173. This awakening serves as a metaphor for our own daily renewal. Each day brings new opportunities to contribute to the great human project of which the wall is such a magnificent example. We may not build walls of stone and mortar, but we all have the opportunity to create works that will outlast our individual lives. Works of art and literature, acts of kindness and compassion, institutions and traditions that serve future generations. 174. As the wall reminds us that we are all part of something larger than ourselves, contributors to a human story that began long before our birth and will continue long after our death, our individual contributions may seem small in comparison to the wall's massive stones, but each is necessary. Each adds its own strength to the whole. Each matters in ways we may never fully understand. 175. As you prepare to leave the wall in your imagination, take a moment to absorb the lessons it offers. Feel the strength of its stones beneath your feet, the result of countless individuals working together toward a common goal. See the beauty of its integration with the natural landscape, a reminder that our greatest achievements honor rather than dominate the world around us. 176. Breathe in the thin mountain air, carrying with it the scent of wildflowers and the memory of ancient craftsmanship. Listen to the whisper of wind through stone, the eternal conversation between human creation and natural force. In this moment, you are connected to everyone who has ever stood where you stand, part of an unbroken chain of human experience stretching back across the centuries.
And let your breath find its natural rhythm. Tonight we journey not through space, but through time itself, to a place where heaven and earth have danced together for nearly 1,500 years. Tonight we walk the sacred halls of memory, where stones hold whispers and light carries prayers across centuries. Picture, if you will, the gentle lapping of ancient waters against marble steps. The Bosphorus sleeps under starlight, its surface like black silk embroidered with silver threads of moonbeams. The air is warm and honeyed, carrying the scent of jasmine and the salt-sweet breath of two seas meeting. In this timeless hour between sunset and dawn, in this magical threshold between Europe and Asia, something magnificent rises against the star-drunk sky. But our story begins long before these stones were cut, long before these walls were raised. Our story begins in the heart of a dream that would outlive empires, survive conquests, and stand as witness to the eternal human longing to touch the divine. The first whisper of wonder. In the soft gray hour before dawn breaks over Constantinople, when the world holds its breath and even the wind falls silent, there stands a monument to human aspiration. But to understand its soul, we must travel backward through the mists of time to when this sacred ground first heard the footsteps of those who sought to build a bridge between earth and heaven. The year was 360, and the Roman Empire stretched like a great tapestry across the known world. Emperor Constantius II, son of Constantine the Great, walked these very grounds where morning mist rose from the Golden Horn like incense from an invisible altar. The city was young then, Constantinople, the new Rome, barely 30 years old and still wearing its ambitions like fresh paint. Here on this hill overlooking the convergence of continents, Constantius dreamed of a church that would reflect the glory of his newly Christian empire. The first Hagia Sophia, Holy Wisdom, was born from this vision. A modest structure by later standards, yet revolutionary in its time, for it represented something unprecedented. A Christian basilica built not in hiding, not in the shadow of persecution, but in the full light of imperial approval. Imagine the whisper of wind through marble columns as the first prayers rose within those walls.
Picture the golden light of oil lamps dancing across frescoed saints, casting shadows that seem to breathe with devotion. This first church stood for 17 years, a brief span in the life of stone, yet long enough to plant seeds of something greater in the collective imagination of a people learning to worship without fear. But empires, like dreams, are fragile things. In January of 504, political storms swept through Constantinople like autumn winds scattering leaves. The beloved patriarch John Chrysostom, known for his eloquent sermons, found himself at odds with Empress Eudoxia. His supporters rioted, and in the chaos that followed, flames licked at the wooden roof of Hagia Sophia until it collapsed in a shower of sparks and ash. The destruction was complete, yet from ashes comes renewal. Emperor Theodosius II, barely older than his fallen predecessor's church, ordered its rebuilding. The second Hagia Sophia rose like a phoenix, larger and more splendid than before. For over a century it stood as the beating heart of Byzantine Christianity, its walls echoing with liturgies that seemed to make the very air shimmer with sanctity. Night after night, year after year, the faithful gathered within its embrace. Merchants paused from counting coins to count their blessings. Mothers lifted children toward heaven-painted ceilings, whispering prayers for their futures. Emperors and peasants alike knelt on the same marble, their earthly distinctions dissolved in the democracy of devotion. But history, like the tide, knows no permanent shore. In January of 532, Constantinople erupted in what would be known as the Nika riots, 6 days of fury that saw half the city burn. The second Hagia Sophia, that century-old vessel of prayer and song, fell victim to the flames once more. Its columns cracked, its mosaics melted, its dreams seemingly turned to smoke. But in the smoldering ruins, Emperor Justinian I saw not an ending, but a beginning. As he stood among the blackened stones, breathing air still thick with ash, a vision began to form in his mind. A vision so audacious, so impossible, that it could only have been born from the marriage of profound faith and boundless ambition. "I shall build," he whispered to the morning wind, "something that will make the angels themselves pause in their flight to look down in wonder."
In the gentle quiet of your imagination, picture the year 532 dawning over a Constantinople scarred but not broken. The riots have ended, the fires extinguished, but in the heart of Emperor Justinian burns a flame that no earthly water can quench. He has dreamed of a church so magnificent, so architecturally impossible, that its very existence will proclaim the glory of God and the eternal nature of his empire. Justinian calls to his court 2 men whose names will echo through the centuries. Anthemius of Tralles, a mathematician and geometer whose mind dances with equations that others cannot even comprehend, and Isidorus of Miletus, a physicist and engineer who sees not obstacles but possibilities in every stone and beam. These 2 men, so different in temperament yet united in genius, gather around tables laden with papyrus scrolls. By candlelight that flickers like golden prayers, they sketch and calculate, dream and measure. They envision something that has never existed, a dome of impossible size suspended over empty air, held aloft not by the brute force of solid walls, but by the elegant mathematics of curved space and distributed weight. The plan that emerges from their midnight sessions is revolutionary. 4 massive piers will rise like the legs of a cosmic table, supporting arches that curve upward to embrace a dome larger than any ever attempted. But this dome will rest not directly on the walls below, but on a ring of windows, 40 windows that will flood the interior with light so divine that worshippers will feel they stand beneath the very dome of heaven itself. As word of the project spreads throughout the empire, a strange magnetism draws craftsmen, artists, and laborers to Constantinople. Stonecutters arrive from quarries where marble has slept for millions of years, waiting for this moment of awakening. Mosaic artists travel from Alexandria and Antioch, their hands trained in the ancient art of making light solid, of transforming tiny cubes of stone and glass into visions of paradise. From the quarries of Proconnesus in the Sea of Marmara come columns of white marble veined with gray, each one a poem written by geological ages. From Egypt arrive shafts of red granite, their surfaces polished to mirror brightness by craftsmen who learned their trade in the shadow of pyramids. From Thessaly comes the green marble that will accent doorways and arches, while from the quarries of Phrygia arrives the deep purple stone that will speak of imperial majesty. The construction begins in February of 532, barely a month after the riots ended. 10,000 workers swarm the site like ants, building a temple to their own ambitions. The sound of chisels on stone creates a rhythm that beats like the city's heart, while the songs of laborers, Christians, pagans, and everything in between blend into a hymn that only heaven can fully hear. Justinian himself walks among the workers daily, his purple robes gathering dust from crushed marble, his imperial hands touching stones that will outlive his dynasty. He is committed to this project not just the treasury of an empire, but something more precious, the dreams of a civilization at its zenith. As the great piers rise, defying every principle of construction known to their age, whispers begin to circulate among the people. Some say angels work alongside the laborers during the night shift, adding their celestial strength to human effort. Others claim that the mortar is mixed not just with water, but with prayer itself, making every joint a sacred bond. Months pass like pages turning in the book of creation. The walls rise higher, the arches begin their graceful curves, and slowly, impossibly, the shape of Justinian's dream begins to emerge from the mathematical drawings into three-dimensional reality. Each day brings new challenges, new innovations, new moments when the impossible becomes inevitable.
In the deep silence of your settling mind, envision the moment when the Great Dome begins its journey skyward. It is now the spring of 537, 5 years since construction began, and the air in Constantinople itself seems to hold its breath. The four great piers stand like ancient guardians, their surfaces smooth as silk, their foundations reaching deep into the living rock beneath the city. Above them, the pendantes, those miraculous curved triangles that would puzzle architects for centuries to come, begin to take shape. These are the secret bridges between the square base below and the circular dome above, the geometric poetry that transforms earthly angles into heavenly curves. Each stone in these pendentives is cut with mathematical precision, yet placed with the tender care of a mother tucking a child into bed. Anthemius and Isidorus stand at the base of their rising miracle, their faces turned upward, their minds calculating forces that seem to dance with divine mathematics. The dome they envision will span 107 feet, wider than the Pantheon in Rome, yet held aloft by principles so revolutionary that future architects will spend lifetimes trying to understand their secret. The construction of the dome itself becomes a meditation on faith made manifest. Layer by layer, ring by ring, the bricks are laid in a spiral that seems to ascend toward heaven itself. The mortar between them is mixed with crushed pottery from Rhodes, amphora shards that once held wine and oil, now transformed into the binding agent that will hold up the sky. As the dome rises, an optical illusion begins to emerge that will mystify visitors for 15 centuries. Because of its proportions, because of the 40 windows pierced around its base, the dome will appear to float, weightless as a cloud, suspended like a prayer between earth and eternity.
Light pours through these windows not as mere illumination, but as something approaching the visible presence of divinity itself. The workers who toil at these impossible heights report strange experiences. Some speak of feeling lighter as they climb higher, as if the ascending stone lifts not just itself, but all who touch it. Others describe moments of perfect silence in the midst of construction noise, instants when the hammering stops and only the whisper of settling mortar can be heard, like the breathing of the building itself. Byzantine historians record that Justinian visits the construction site daily, often climbing the wooden scaffolding that wraps the rising dome like a cocoon around a butterfly waiting to emerge. At these heights, with Constantinople spread below him like a map of his dreams, the emperor is said to have experienced visions of the completed church filled with light so pure that it seems to emanate from the very stones themselves. As autumn arrives in 537, the dome nears completion. The final stones at its apex must be placed with perfect precision, for upon them will rest not just the physical weight of the structure, but the spiritual aspirations of an entire civilization. Master craftsmen, their hands steady despite the height, set these final pieces with the reverence of priests placing relics on an altar. The moment the dome is complete, something changes in the very air of Constantinople. Pilgrims report seeing a golden glow emanating from the construction site at sunset, as if the building has learned to store sunlight and release it slowly through the night. Ships sailing past in the Bosphorus adjust their course to catch a glimpse of this architectural miracle, their sailors crossing themselves in wonder. But the dome is only the crown of a greater masterpiece. Below it, the nave stretches like a great ship designed to carry souls across the sea of mortality. The marble floors are laid in patterns that seem to flow like frozen rivers, while the walls rise in tiers of columns and arches that create a forest of stone where light filters through like golden rain.
The sacred geometry of light. In the gentle rhythm of your breathing, feel yourself standing within the completed nave of Hagia Sophia as the year 537 draws to its close. The construction scaffolding has been removed, the marble dust swept away, and for the first time, the full impact of what has been created can be experienced. The silence within these walls is not empty, but full, pregnant with the accumulated prayers of 5 years of labor and dream. Light enters this sacred space not as mere sunshine, but transformed into something approaching the visible presence of the divine. The 40 windows around the dome's base admit rays that seem to pause, to dance, to celebrate their arrival in this holy place. The light pools in some areas like liquid gold, while in others it streams in shafts so pure they seem solid enough to climb. The marble surfaces throughout the interior have been chosen not just for their beauty, but for their ability to interact with light in ways that create an ever-changing symphony of reflection and shadow. The white Proconesian marble catches and holds the morning sun, while the green Thessalian stone seems to glow with an inner life when afternoon light strikes it at precisely the right angle. Along the walls, niches and alcoves create smaller sanctuaries within the greater sanctuary, each one designed to capture and concentrate light in ways that make even the humblest worshiper feel singled out for divine attention. The architects have understood something profound, that sacred space is not just about grand gestures, but about intimate moments of connection between the human heart and the infinite mystery it seeks to touch. The galleries above, accessible by gently sloping ramps rather than stairs, offer perspectives on the interior that seem to shift and change as one moves. From these elevated viewpoints, the faithful can look down upon the altar area and across to the great dome, experiencing the space as angels might, suspended between earth and heaven, witnesses to the divine liturgy that transforms bread and wine into something beyond the material world.
As December arrives and the dedication ceremony approaches, artisans work with fevered devotion to complete the interior decorations. The early mosaics are geometric rather than figurative, vast fields of gold tessellate interrupted by crosses and sacred monograms that seem to float against the golden background like constellations against a sunset sky. These gold backgrounds are not mere decoration, but theological statements made visible. Each tiny cube of gold-backed glass has been set at a slightly different angle, creating a surface that seems to breathe with light, that makes the very walls appear to be constructed from crystallized sunshine. When candles and oil lamps are lit for evening services, these surfaces respond by glowing as if lit from within. The acoustics of the space reveal another miracle of mathematical precision. A whisper spoken near the altar can be heard clearly in the farthest corners of the galleries, while the chanting of the liturgy seems to come not from any particular direction, but from the air itself. The curved surfaces of the dome and pendentives gather sound and redistribute it, creating an auditory experience that mirrors the visual phenomenon of the floating dome. Musicians and cantors who participate in the first rehearsals report that their voices seem to be lifted beyond their normal range, that harmonies they have sung elsewhere suddenly bloom with new richness and depth. The building itself becomes a musical instrument, its vast interior a resonating chamber that transforms human song into something approaching angelic chorus. In the final days before dedication, Justinian spends long hours alone in the completed church, sometimes sitting in meditation, sometimes walking slowly around the perimeter, listening to the subtle sounds of the building settling into its eternal posture. He has achieved something unprecedented, a structure that seems to exist simultaneously in the physical world and in the realm of pure spirit.
The dedication of dreams. The dawn of December 27, 537, breaks over Constantinople with unusual clarity, as if heaven itself has polished the sky for this moment of moments. Let your imagination drift with the morning mist, rising from the Golden Horn, carrying with it the anticipation of an entire city preparing to witness the impossible made manifest. Today, Hagia Sophia will be dedicated and the world will never quite be the same. Before sunrise, pilgrims begin gathering outside the still sealed doors of the great church. They come from every corner of the known world, merchants who have traveled the Silk Road, scholars from Alexandria, monks from the Egyptian desert, nobles from Rome itself. Each brings not just their physical presence, but their hopes, their fears, their deepest longings for connection with the divine mystery that governs all existence. Emperor Justinian rises before dawn and spends the early hours in private prayer, preparing himself not just for a ceremonial role, but for what he believes will be a moment of cosmic significance. He has staked not just his treasury on this project, but his legacy, his very understanding of what it means to rule in partnership with divine will. As he dons his ceremonial robes, each thread seems heavy with the weight of history about to be made. Patriarch Minos, who will conduct the dedication ceremony, walks through the pre-dawn silence of his private chapel, his mind turning over the liturgy that will transform this architectural achievement into something sacred, something set apart from the merely human realm of building and stone. He understands that words spoken in this place will carry farther than any earthly voice should be able to reach. As the sun climbs towards its zenith, the great bronze doors of Hagia Sophia swing open with a sound like thunder rolling across still water. The crowd gathered outside falls silent, then gasps as one, for nothing in their experience has prepared them for what they see within. Light streams through the 40 windows of the dome, creating an illumination so pure, so golden, that it seems to emanate not from the sun, but from some source beyond the physical universe. The first to enter are the members of the court. their silk garments rustling like wind through wheat fields. Behind them come the senators, the clergy, the guild masters, and finally the people themselves, the bakers and fishermen, the mothers and children, the old and young together. Each person who crosses the threshold experiences their own private miracle, the sudden expansion of the heart that comes when human limitations encounter limitless possibility. The interior, which seemed vast during construction, now appears infinite. The dome soars overhead like the very vault of heaven, while the light pouring through its windows creates the illusion that the entire structure is constructed not from stone and mortar, but from crystallized air and sanctified space. Many of those entering fall to their knees spontaneously, overwhelmed by a beauty that speaks directly to the soul. Justinian himself enters last, as befits his imperial dignity, but also because he wants to savor this moment, the culmination of 5.5 years of obsessive devotion to a single, impossible vision. As he walks down the central nave toward the altar, his footsteps echoing in the vast space, he is said to have whispered words that would become legendary. "Solomon, I have surpassed you." The dedication ceremony itself becomes a liturgy of light and sound that transforms the assembled congregation into something approaching a single organism of worship. The chanting of the Trisagon, "Holy God, Holy Mighty, Holy Immortal," rises from hundreds of voices and seems to be caught by the curved surfaces of the dome, lifted and amplified until it becomes not just human song, but the very music of the spheres. As incense rises from golden censers, the smoke creates visible streams in the light-filled air, ascending toward the dome in spirals that seem to follow pathways written in the architecture itself. The sight is so beautiful, so otherworldly, that many witnesses report feeling transported beyond the boundaries of ordinary experience into direct encounter with the sacred mystery that underlies all existence.
The Golden Age of Prayer. In the soft embrace of evening light, let your mind drift forward through the decades that follow the dedication. Decades when Hagia Sophia becomes not just a building, but the beating heart of an empire. The focal point where heaven and earth seem to meet in eternal conversation. The years pass like prayers whispered in candlelight, each one adding its own layer of sanctity to walls already thick with devotion. During these golden centuries of Byzantine power, the great church serves as witness to moments that shape the very soul of Eastern Christianity. Emperors are crowned beneath its soaring dome, their earthly authority blessed by light that seems to descend directly from the divine realm. Patriarchs deliver sermons that echo through the vast space and beyond, into the streets of Constantinople, out across the empire, and down through the centuries to touch hearts not yet born. The liturgy celebrated within these walls develops its own distinctive character, shaped by the unique acoustics and atmosphere of the space. The divine liturgy of St. John Chrysostom unfolds here like a drama of cosmic significance, with the great dome serving as both stage and auditorium for the mystery of transubstantiation. When the priest elevates the consecrated bread and wine, the light streaming through the dome windows seems to intensify, as if creation itself recognizes the miracle taking place. Pilgrims arrive daily from the farthest reaches of the known world, their journeys measured not in miles, but in lifetimes of longing. Russian princes travel down the Dnieper River and across the Black Sea to witness what their chroniclers will describe as a beauty beyond earthly comprehension. Western European nobles pause in their political intrigues
to experience something that transcends all earthly ambition. Each visitor leaves something of themselves in the prayer-saturated air and takes something away that will transform their understanding of what human beings, in partnership with divine inspiration, are capable of creating. The interior decoration evolves during these centuries as successive emperors and patriarchs add their own contributions to the visual symphony. New mosaics appear on walls and vaults, not the figurative images that will come later, but geometric patterns and sacred symbols that seem to pulse with their own inner light. Crosses bloom across golden surfaces like flowers in a celestial garden, while monograms of Christ appear and disappear in the interplay of light and shadow as the sun moves across the sky. The great silver iconostasis, the screen that separates the nave from the altar area, becomes a masterpiece of the metalworker's art. Crafted from silver so pure it seems to glow with its own light, decorated with crosses and vine patterns that seem to grow before the viewer's eyes, it serves as both barrier and invitation, hiding the sacred mysteries while simultaneously revealing their overwhelming beauty. Children born in Constantinople during these centuries grow up with Hagia Sophia as their first and most profound encounter with the sacred. They toddle across its marble pavements while their parents pray, their innocent laughter adding a note of joy to the eternal hymn of worship. As they grow, the great church becomes the backdrop for every significant moment of their lives: baptisms and confirmations, weddings and funerals, the full cycle of human experience blessed by the presence of the divine. Scholars and theologians gather in the galleries to debate questions that have puzzled humanity since consciousness first turned toward the mystery of existence. Their discussions, conducted in the whispered reverence appropriate to the sacred space, contribute to the development of Eastern Orthodox theology and spirituality. The building itself seems to participate in these conversations, its perfect proportions serving as a visible argument for the existence of divine order underlying all creation. The monastic chants seem to emanate from the very stones of the building. During great feasts of the Christian calendar, the entire population of Constantinople seems to flow into and around Hagia Sophia like a river of devotion. On Easter morning, the cry of "Christ is risen" echoes through the vast interior with such power that even the stones seem to proclaim the triumph of life over death. On Christmas Eve, the light of countless candles mirrors the light of the dome windows, creating an illumination so beautiful that it seems to make visible the very presence of divine love.
Chapter 8. The Renaissance of Sacred Art. 71. In the golden light of restoration that dawns over Constantinople in 843, picture the great church awakening from its century-long fast from figurative beauty. Like a garden emerging from winter, Hagia Sophia begins to bloom once again with images that speak directly to the human heart, bridges of color and form that span the distance between mortality and eternity. The first new mosaic to appear in the restored church is not placed in some hidden corner, but in the most prominent position possible, the semidome of the apse, where all eyes naturally turn during the celebration of the liturgy. Here, enthroned in golden majesty, appears the Virgin Mary, holding the Christ child, her expression combining maternal tenderness with divine authority in a way that stops the breath of all who see her. This apse mosaic, completed around 867, becomes the mother of all subsequent Byzantine religious art, its style and spiritual power influencing mosaicists and painters for centuries to come. The Virgin's face, composed of thousands of tiny cubes of stone and glass, seems to live and breathe, to watch over the congregation with eyes that hold all the compassion of divine motherhood. But it is in the narthex, the entrance hall of the church, that visitors encounter what may be the most psychologically profound mosaic in all of Christian art. Above the imperial door, which leads from the narthex into the nave, appears an image of Christ Pantocrator, Christ as ruler of all creation, but with an innovation that demonstrates the theological sophistication of Byzantine art. This Christ mosaic, probably completed in the 10th century, presents a face that seems to change depending upon which side the viewer approaches from. From the left, Christ appears stern and judgmental, the divine justice that weighs all human actions in the balance of eternity. From the right, his expression is infinitely compassionate, the divine mercy that forgives all who approach in genuine repentance. From directly in front, the two aspects blend into something that transcends human understanding, the mystery of divine love that is simultaneously just and merciful. In the galleries above, private devotional mosaics begin to appear, commissioned by emperors and nobles as eternal prayers for themselves and their families. The most famous of these, known as the Diocesis mosaic, shows Christ flanked by the Virgin Mary and John the Baptist in poses of intercession. The faces in this composition achieve a level of spiritual intensity and artistic sophistication that makes them seem more real than reality itself. These gallery mosaics introduce something new to Byzantine art, a sense of individual personality and emotion that makes each figure a unique soul rather than a generic type. The faces seem to carry the weight of personal experience, the joy and sorrow of lives lived in intimate relationship with the divine mystery. Visitors report feeling recognized by these mosaic saints, as if ancient glass and stone could somehow peer into the depths of their contemporary hearts. The restoration of figurative art in Hagia Sophia coincides with a renaissance of theological thought and mystical experience throughout the Byzantine Empire. The church becomes not just a place of worship, but a kind of three-dimensional theology textbook, where every image contributes to a vast visual symphony exploring the relationship between divine and human nature. New liturgical practices develop to take advantage of the restored artistic splendor. Processional routes are planned to provide optimal viewing angles for the major mosaics, while the lighting of candles and oil lamps is choreographed to create ever-changing patterns of illumination that seem to bring the mosaic figures to life. The building becomes a sacred theater where the drama of salvation unfolds in light and color, sound and movement. During major feast days, the entire interior of Hagia Sophia blazes with the light of thousands of candles, their flames reflecting off the gold backgrounds of the mosaics to create an illumination so intense it seems to transport worshippers beyond the boundaries of earthly experience. Contemporary accounts describe feelings of mystical union, moments when the boundary between self and cosmos dissolves in the golden radiance that fills the sacred space.
The Twilight of Byzantium, 81. As your breath deepens and your thoughts begin to drift toward the realm of dreams, let us follow the golden thread of time forward to the final centuries of Byzantine rule, when Hagia Sophia stands as both the crown jewel and the melancholy symbol of an empire growing ever smaller, ever more precious, like a perfect pearl in the closing palm of history. The year 1204 brings a wound to Constantinople that will never fully heal. The Fourth Crusade, originally intended to liberate the Holy Land from Muslim rule, instead turns its violence against the greatest Christian city in the world. On April 13th, the Crusaders breach the walls of Constantinople, and for 3 days the city suffers pillage and destruction that shocks even an age accustomed to warfare's cruelties. Hagia Sophia herself does not escape this violation.
Latin soldiers storm through her sacred doors, their iron boots ringing against marble that had known the soft footsteps of pilgrims for nearly 7 centuries. They strip the silver from the iconostasis, tear down silk hangings, and commit acts of sacrilege that leave the building traumatized, its spiritual atmosphere scarred by violence and greed. Most shocking of all, they place a prostitute on the patriarch's throne and force her to sing bawdy songs while they drink wine from the sacred chalices. The great church, which had been a bridge between heaven and earth, becomes, for these terrible days, a scene of defilement that seems to shake the very foundations of the cosmos. Yet, even in this darkest hour, something indestructible persists. The mosaics, too high and too firmly embedded to be easily looted, continued to gaze down with their eternal expressions of divine love and mercy. The dome still floats impossibly overhead, still admits the same golden light that had blessed emperors and peasants alike. The building itself, wounded but not broken, waits with the patience of stone for restoration and renewal. When the Byzantines reclaim their capital in 1261, they find Hagia Sophia scarred but structurally sound, her essential spirit intact beneath the surface damage. The restoration that follows becomes an act of collective devotion, as if the entire empire seeks to heal not just a building, but its own wounded soul through the careful repair of this most sacred space. New mosaics appear during this restoration period, more intimate and personal than their predecessors. The famous mosaic of Emperor John VIII Palaiologos and Empress Helena, completed in the late 13th century, shows the imperial couple in poses of humble supplication, their earthly power acknowledged as nothing compared to the divine authority they seek to serve. Their faces carry the weight of an empire under siege, yet also the peace that comes from surrender to a will greater than their own. As the 14th century dawns, Hagia Sophia becomes the setting for increasingly desperate prayers as the Ottoman Empire grows stronger and the Byzantine territories shrink like morning mist before the rising sun. The great church, which had once stood at the center of a vast empire, now serves a city-state surrounded by enemies, its congregations swelling with refugees from territories lost to the advancing Turkish armies. The liturgies celebrated within these walls take on a new poignancy during these final centuries of Christian rule. Every divine liturgy becomes a defiant act of faith, every hymn a declaration that some things transcend political fortunes. The dome still soars overhead like a stone prayer, still admits the same eternal light, still creates the same sense of standing at the threshold between time and eternity. Scholars and theologians flock to Constantinople during these twilight years, drawn by the sense that they are witnessing the end of an epoch. They fill the galleries of Hagia Sophia for debates that feel like last conversations, discussions of divine mysteries that take on urgency when earthly certainties crumble. The building becomes a repository not just of art and architecture, but of 1,000 years of accumulated wisdom about the human relationship with the divine. The last Byzantine emperor, Constantine XI Palaiologos, spends his final night as a Christian ruler kneeling in prayer before the apse mosaic of the Virgin and Child. Around him, the few remaining courtiers and clergy maintain their own vigils, their whispered prayers joining with the accumulated devotion of 15 centuries to create an atmosphere so thick with sanctity that it seems almost visible. On May 28, 1453, as Ottoman cannons thunder against the walls of Constantinople, the final Christian liturgy is celebrated in Hagia Sophia. Patriarch Gennadios lifts the consecrated bread and wine beneath the floating dome, and for a moment that seems to stretch beyond time, the eternal mystery of transubstantiation unfolds one last time in the space that had witnessed this miracle for nearly 1,000 years.
The congregation that night includes not just the wealthy and powerful, but servants and fishermen, mothers clutching children, old people who remember when the empire seemed eternal. They know that they are participating in an ending, yet their faith tells them that some endings are also beginnings, that the light streaming through those 40 windows can never truly be extinguished by any earthly power.
By like prayers whispered in twilight, let your imagination follow the centuries of Ottoman rule, when Hagia Sophia serves as the principal mosque of an empire that stretches from the Danube to the Euphrates, from the Crimea to the cataracts of the Nile. The Great Dome, which once echoed with Christian liturgy, now resonates with the rhythmic recitation of the Quran, yet the essential mystery of the space remains unchanged. Under Ottoman patronage, Hagia Sophia undergoes modifications that enhance rather than diminish her spiritual power. 4 minarets rise at her corners like prayers made visible in stone, their slender forms creating a dialogue with the ancient dome that seems to have been planned from the beginning of time. These towers, added gradually over the centuries, become launching points for the call to prayer that flows across Constantinople 5 times daily, marking the rhythm of a city surrendered to divine will. The interior develops its own unique character during these centuries, neither purely Christian nor conventionally Islamic, but something new, a synthesis of spiritual traditions united in their recognition of the one God who transcends all human categories. The covered mosaics sleep beneath their plaster shrouds like hibernating prayers, while Arabic calligraphy blooms across walls and columns like flowers in a celestial garden. The great medallions bearing the names of Allah, Muhammad, and the first 4 caliphs are added in the 19th century by the master calligrapher Kazasker Mustafa İsset Efendi. These circular panels, among the largest examples of Islamic calligraphy in the world, float against the ancient walls like spiritual suns, their Arabic letters flowing with the same divine mathematics that governs the dome's perfect proportions. The mihrab installed in the southeastern wall becomes a masterpiece of Ottoman architectural art, its marble surfaces carved with verses from the Quran that seem to glow with inner light. The Qibla direction it indicates may point toward Mecca rather than Jerusalem, but the underlying gesture remains the same, the human heart turning toward the source of all existence, seeking guidance and grace from the infinite mystery that sustains all creation. Friday prayers in Hagia Sophia during the Ottoman centuries become events that transform not just the building, but the entire city. Thousands of worshippers flow through the great doors, their ablutions performed at marble fountains that replace the earlier Christian baptismal fonts. The sight of so many believers prostrating themselves in unison beneath the floating dome creates a human prayer rug that stretches from wall to wall. The acoustics that once carried Christian chant now lift the recitation of the Quran with equal power and beauty. The imam's voice, trained in the complex melodies of Quranic recitation, fills the vast space with Arabic syllables that seem to dance with the light streaming through the dome windows. Even those who do not understand the language find themselves moved by the musical quality of the sacred text, the way sound becomes prayer, becomes communion with the divine. During the holy month of Ramadan, Hagia Sophia takes on an especially sacred character. The breaking of the fast occurs within her walls as the sun sets behind the western gallery, its last rays catching the Arabic calligraphy and making it seem to burn with spiritual fire. The contrast between the day's fasting and the evening's gentle nourishment becomes a meditation on divine mercy, on the way spiritual hunger leads to deeper satisfaction than any material feast. Sufi mystics, drawn by the spiritual power accumulated within these walls over more than a millennium, gather in the galleries for sessions of dhikr, the remembrance of God through repetitive prayer and movement. Their whirling meditations, performed in the soft light that filters through the windows, seem to mirror the rotation of planets around the sun, the circulation of blood through the human body, the eternal dance of creation around its divine source. The great building serves not just as a place of worship, but as a center of Islamic learning. Scholars gather in its various chambers to study theology, law, astronomy, and mathematics, their discussions conducted in the whispered reverence appropriate to sacred space.
The geometric perfection of the architecture itself becomes a text they study, a three-dimensional meditation on the mathematical principles that Islamic thought sees as reflections of divine order. Pilgrims arriving in Istanbul from across the Islamic world make Hagia Sophia their first destination, drawn not just by its architectural magnificence, but by the sense that this place exists at a crossroads of spiritual traditions. Here, they feel, the best of human aspiration toward the divine has been preserved and honored, regardless of the specific forms that aspiration has taken across the centuries.
The sleeping mosaics. In the gentle depths of contemplation, let your mind turn toward one of the most poignant aspects of Hagia Sophia's transformation, the Christian mosaics that sleep beneath layers of plaster, like pressed flowers hidden between the pages of an ancient book. These images, created with such devotion over centuries of Byzantine rule, wait in darkness for an awakening that may never come, yet their spiritual power seems to radiate through the covering that conceals them. The Ottoman decision to preserve rather than destroy these mosaics reflects a wisdom that transcends religious boundaries. Sultan Mehmed II and his successors understood, perhaps intuitively, that beauty touched by centuries of prayer carries a sanctity that belongs not to any single faith, but to the human spirit itself. The plaster that covers these images becomes not a burial shroud, but a protective cocoon, preserving treasures for some future moment of revelation. Occasionally, during renovations or repairs, small sections of plaster fall away to reveal glimpses of the hidden artwork beneath. Workers report finding fragments of angelic wings, portions of halos, sections of robes that seem to shimmer with their own inner light even after centuries of darkness. These brief revelations create moments of profound connection across time, as if the ancient artists are reaching through the centuries to touch contemporary hearts. The Virgin and Child in the apse, though covered, continue to exert their spiritual influence on the space. Those who pray facing the mihrab below report sensing a presence, a maternal warmth that seems to emanate from the wall itself. The Islamic understanding of Mary as a blessed among women creates no conflict with this sensation. Rather, it adds another layer to the complex spiritual atmosphere that permeates the building. In the galleries, where the most personal and intimate mosaics hide beneath their pastor veils, the sense of invisible presence becomes almost palpable. Visitors walking through these upper levels often pause without knowing why, drawn to stop and reflect in places where centuries earlier Byzantine nobles commissioned internal prayers in stone and glass. The hidden faces seem to watch through their coverings, still radiating the compassion and wisdom that their creators embedded in every tessera. The great Christ Pantocrator in the narthex, sealed away from view but not from memory, continues to guard the threshold between the outer world and the sacred interior. Though no physical eyes can see his changing expression, stern on one side, merciful on the other, the psychological impact of his presence persists. Those entering for prayer still sense themselves being judged and forgiven, still feel the weight of divine attention turned upon their hearts. Islamic mystics, particularly sensitive to spiritual presence, regardless of its historical form, often report the most profound experiences of connection with these hidden images. They understand that divine love expresses itself through many faces across many centuries, and the faces sleeping beneath the plaster become for them additional witnesses to the one truth that underlies all genuine spiritual experience. The Deasis mosaic in the South Gallery, showing Christ flanked by the Virgin Mary and John the Baptist in poses of intercession, creates an especially powerful field of spiritual energy despite its concealment. The mathematical precision of Islamic prayer, performed 5 times daily in the nave below, seems to resonate with the hidden geometry of this ancient composition, creating harmonies that exist in dimensions beyond the merely physical. During the centuries of Ottoman rule, legends grow around these sleeping images. Some say they appear in dreams to those who pray with particular devotion, offering guidance and comfort that transcends the boundaries of religious tradition. Others claim that during the deepest hours of night prayer, when the building falls silent except for the whisper of wind through its dome, the covered mosaics glow faintly through their plaster veils, visible only to those whose hearts have been purified by genuine surrender to divine will. The preservation of these mosaics becomes, in retrospect, one of the great acts of cultural wisdom in human history.
At a time when religious differences too often led to the destruction of artistic treasures, the Ottoman Empire chose protection over elimination, understanding that beauty created in service of the divine belongs ultimately to all humanity, regardless of the specific forms of faith that inspired its creation.
The Secularization 125. In the quiet space between sleeping and waking, let your thoughts drift forward to November 1st, 1931, when Hagia Sophia experiences perhaps the most radical transformation in her long history. For nearly 5 centuries, she has served as the principal mosque of the Ottoman Empire, her minarets calling the faithful to prayer 5 times daily, her vast interior filled with the rhythmic movements of Islamic worship. Now, in the new Turkish Republic, she will become something unprecedented, a museum, a secular shrine to the accumulated spiritual heritage of humanity itself. The decision comes from Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the founder of modern Turkey, who envisions his new nation as a bridge between East and West, between traditional faith and modern secularism. In Hagia Sophia, he sees the perfect symbol of this synthesis, a building that has served both Christianity and Islam with equal dignity, now set aside to serve the broader human quest for beauty, wisdom, and transcendence. The transformation requires delicate negotiations with competing visions of the building's future. Conservative Muslims argue for its continuation as a mosque, while Greek Orthodox communities dream of its restoration as a church. Ataturk's solution is characteristically bold. Hagia Sophia will belong to neither tradition exclusively, but to both simultaneously and to all humanity beyond them. The conversion process begins with archaeological precision and artistic sensitivity. The Islamic additions, the mihrab, minbar, and great calligraphic medallions, are preserved as integral parts of the building's historical identity. But now, for the first time in nearly 5 centuries, the hidden Christian mosaics can begin their slow awakening from underneath their protective plaster coverings. The first mosaic to be uncovered is the Virgin and Child in the apse, revealed gradually over months of painstaking work by international teams of art historians and conservators. As each section of plaster is carefully removed, gasps of wonder echo through the sacred space. The colors, preserved in darkness for so long, blaze with an intensity that seems impossible. Golds that capture and hold light like liquid sunshine, blues deeper than midnight sky, flesh tones that seem to pulse with life itself. The process of revelation becomes a kind of resurrection, as faces that had been hidden for centuries slowly emerge to gaze once again upon the space they had blessed for so long. The Virgin's expression, when fully revealed, stops visitors in their tracks. Her eyes hold a combination of maternal tenderness and divine authority that transcend religious boundaries, speaking directly to something universal in the human heart. The Christ Pontecrator in the narthex poses special challenges for the restoration team. His face, with its dual aspect of judgment and mercy, requires the most delicate touch to reveal properly. When the work is complete, visitors find themselves confronted once again with that changing expression that had mystified pilgrims for centuries. Stern on the left, compassionate on the right, mysteriously unified when viewed from directly in front. The gallery mosaics proved to be the most rewarding discoveries. The Desis composition, when fully revealed, displays a level of artistic sophistication and spiritual intensity that establishes it immediately as one of the masterpieces of world art. The faces of Christ, Mary, and John the Baptist seem to live and breathe, their expressions capturing the full range of human emotion transfigured by divine love. As a museum, Hagia Sophia attracts visitors from every corner of the globe and every tradition of faith and philosophy. Scholars come to study the synthesis of architectural and artistic traditions represented in the building. Believers come to experience a space that has been sanctified by 15 centuries of prayer in multiple traditions. Seekers come simply to stand in the presence of something that speaks to the deepest human longing for transcendence. The museum years allow for unprecedented scholarly research into the building's history, construction techniques, and artistic treasures. Archaeological excavations reveal foundations that date back to the original Church of Constantine, while careful analysis of the mosaics provide new insights into Byzantine artistic methods and spiritual symbolism. The building becomes not just a repository of beauty, but a 3-dimensional textbook of human spiritual development.
The Return to Prayer, 135. In the soft embrace of twilight consciousness, let your mind follow the thread of time to July 24, 2020, when the Turkish State Council reverses the 1935 decision that transformed Hagia Sophia into a museum. After 86 years of secular service to humanity's artistic and spiritual heritage, the great building prepares once again to echo with the sounds of active worship, to serve as a living mosque rather than a preserved memory. The decision sends ripples of reaction around the world. UNESCO expresses concern about the preservation of the Christian mosaics. The Greek Orthodox Church mourns what it sees as the final closing of a door that had remained symbolically open. Islamic communities celebrate the restoration of what they consider one of their most sacred spaces. Art historians worry about access for research and conservation. In the midst of these human concerns, Hagia Sophia herself waits with the patience of stone that has witnessed the rise and fall of empires. The preparations for the building's return to active mosque status reveal the same sensitivity to its complex heritage that had characterized earlier transformations. The newly revealed Christian mosaics will not be covered again, but during prayer times, certain images will be concealed by curtains that can be drawn aside when the building is not in use for worship. The solution attempts to honor both the Islamic requirement for non-figurative prayer space and the artistic heritage that belongs to all humanity. The first Friday prayer service in Hagia Sophia as a restored mosque takes place on July 24, 2020, exactly 86 years after its secularization. President Erdogan himself participates, holding a copy of the Quran as he enters the space that has served so many forms of faith across its long history. The moment carries the weight of historical continuity. This is not the beginning of something new, but the restoration of something ancient. As the muezzin's call echoes once again through the vast interior, the building seems to remember its centuries of Islamic worship. The acoustics, unchanged by its museum years, lift the Arabic phrases with the same power they had carried for 5 centuries of Ottoman rule. Light streams through the dome windows with undiminished intensity, blessing Islamic prayer with the same divine radiance that had once illuminated Christian liturgy. The restoration of active worship creates new complexities in the building's daily rhythm. Hours are designated for prayer when the space serves its religious function, while other times remain open for cultural and historical appreciation. Visitors from around the world continue to arrive, now witnessing not just the architectural and artistic heritage of the building, but its living spiritual function as well. The Christian mosaics, no longer hidden but occasionally veiled during prayer, take on a new role in the building's spiritual ecosystem. They serve as silent witnesses to the continuity of divine worship across centuries and traditions, their ancient faces gazing down upon contemporary believers with the same compassion they had shown to Byzantine emperors and Ottoman sultans. The transformation back to active mosque status does not diminish the building's universal significance, but adds another chapter to its ongoing story as a place where human beings encounter the divine mystery that transcends all particular forms of faith. The mathematical perfection of Islamic prayer, the devotional intensity of Christian contemplation, and the scholarly appreciation of secular study all find their place within walls that have grown large enough to embrace the full spectrum of human spiritual aspiration. International visitors now witness something remarkable, a building that serves simultaneously as active religious site, preserved historical monument, and living bridge between different traditions of faith.
The sight of contemporary Muslims prostrating themselves in prayer beneath mosaics of Christ and the Virgin Mary creates a visual dialogue between past and present, between different paths toward the same ultimate truth. As the months pass, Hagia Sophia settles into its new old rhythm with the grace of something that has experienced many transformations and survived them all. The dome still floats impossibly overhead, still admits the same transformative light, still creates the same sense of standing at the intersection of heaven and earth. The essential mystery of the place persists, transcending whatever particular forms of worship unfold within its embrace.
The Eternal Present, 145. In the deepest silence of your contemplation, let your awareness rest in the eternal present moment of Hagia Sophia, where all time converges and every prayer ever offered within her walls continues to resonate in the golden air beneath her floating dome. Here, in this sacred space that exists both in Istanbul and beyond geography, both in history and beyond time, the full miracle of human spiritual aspiration becomes visible. 146. Stand now in your imagination within the nave of Hagia Sophia as she exists in this eternal moment. The light streaming through the 40 windows carries within it the accumulated radiance of nearly 15 centuries. Byzantine gold and Ottoman silver, the candle flames of midnight vigils in the morning sun of resurrection celebrations, the soft illumination of scholarly study, and the blazing brightness of mystical vision. The marble beneath your feet has been worn smooth by the footsteps of emperors and pilgrims, sultans and scholars, believers and seekers from every tradition and every century. Each step you take connects you to this vast communion of souls who have found in this place something that speaks to the deepest human longing for transcendence, for connection with the source and destination of all existence. Around you, the walls hold within their stones the whispered prayers of countless generations. The mosaics, whether visible or hidden, continue to radiate the devotion with which they were created, their ancient faces serving as windows between the material and spiritual realms. The Arabic calligraphy flows across surfaces like crystallized music, its sacred geometry reflecting the mathematical perfection that underlies all creation. Above you, the great dome performs its daily miracle of seeming to float weightless against the sky, supported not just by earthly engineering alone, but by the accumulated faith of all who have found in its perfect proportions a reflection of divine order. The 40 windows around its base admit not just sunlight, but the very presence of the divine mystery that illuminates all genuine spiritual seeking. In this eternal present, the boundaries between different religious traditions dissolve without disappearing. Christian and Islamic, Byzantine and Ottoman, ancient and contemporary, all these distinctions remain real and important, yet all are embraced within something larger than any single tradition can contain. Hagia Sophia becomes a living symbol of the unity that underlies apparent diversity, the one truth that expresses itself through many voices. The acoustics of the space, perfected across centuries of worship, carry not just contemporary prayers, but the echo of every prayer ever offered here. Listen carefully, and you might hear the chanting of Byzantine monks blending with the recitation of Ottoman imams, the whispered supplications of medieval pilgrims harmonizing with the spoken reflections of modern scholars, all joining together in a symphony of human souls reaching toward their source. This is the true miracle of Hagia Sophia. Not just that it has survived wars and conquests, earthquakes and fires, political upheavals and religious transformations, but that it has somehow grown larger through each challenge, more inclusive through each change,
more capable of embracing the full spectrum of human spiritual experience. The building serves now as a kind of three-dimensional prayer, a meditation in stone and light on the eternal questions that have always driven human beings to seek something beyond the material world. What is the source of beauty? How does the finite touch the infinite? Where does human aspiration meet divine grace? Hagia Sophia doesn't answer these questions so much as embody them, creating a space where the questions themselves become forms of prayer. In contemplating her story, we find our own story reflected and magnified. Like Hagia Sophia, we're beings caught between earth and heaven, matter and spirit, time and eternity. Like her, we have the capacity to be transformed by encounters with the sacred while remaining essentially ourselves. Like her, we can serve as bridges between different worlds, different ways of understanding the mystery of existence. The light that streams through her windows is the same light that illuminates every human heart open to the possibility of transcendence. The silence that fills her spaces between prayers is the same silence in which all genuine spiritual insight is born. The sense of standing in the presence of something infinitely greater than ourselves that overwhelms visitors to Hagia Sophia is available to anyone, anywhere, who pauses long enough to recognize the sacred mystery that surrounds and sustains all existence.
The dream continues. As your breathing deepens and your mind prepares for the journey into sleep, carry with you the image of Hagia Sophia, standing eternal in the soft light between day and night, between time and eternity, between the world as we know it and the world as it might be. She rises against the star-touched sky like a prayer made visible, her dome catching the last rays of sunset and the first whispers of dawn, her walls holding within them all the dreams and devotions of 15 centuries. The story of Hagia Sophia is ultimately the story of human beings at their best, reaching beyond themselves, creating beauty that outlasts their individual lives, finding ways to touch the infinite through the work of finite hands. In her stones, we see what becomes possible when mathematical precision serves spiritual vision, when political power bows to artistic inspiration, when the boundaries between traditions dissolve in the face of shared reverence for the mystery that underlies all existence. She stands now as she has always stood, as a reminder that some things transcend the conflicts and divisions that seem so important in any given moment. Her dome floats above the theological arguments that rage below. Her light shines through the political storms that sweep across the surface of history. Her silence embraces all the words that human beings use to try to capture the ineffable mystery of divine love. In your dreams tonight, you might find yourself walking through her golden interior, feeling the marble smooth beneath your feet, hearing the whisper of wind through her vast spaces, sensing the presence of all who have come before and all who will come after in the endless procession of souls seeking connection with their source. You might look up at her impossible dome and understand, for a moment that transcends understanding, how human aspiration and divine grace collaborate to create miracles that outlast empires. The dream that became Hagia Sophia continues to unfold, not just in the building herself, but in every human heart that recognizes beauty as a pathway to truth, silence as a form of prayer, and the search for transcendence as the most human of all activities. She teaches us that the sacred can be found not just in the traditionally holy places, but wherever human beings bring their full attention, their deepest love, and their most authentic reverence to the mystery of existence. Sleep now, dear dreamer, and let the light of Hagia Sophia shine through your rest. Let her teach you, in the wordless language of dreams, that you too are capable of creating spaces where heaven and earth meet, moments when time touches eternity, bridges between what is and what might be.
Let her dome remind you that some things in this world are built not for conquest, but for contemplation, not for possession, but for shared wonder, not for the few, but for all who hunger for beauty, truth, and the peace that passes understanding. In the morning, when you wake, carry with you the memory of standing in that golden light, of feeling yourself held by walls that have embraced every form of genuine seeking, of breathing air that has carried the prayers of saints and sultans, emperors and peasants, all united in their recognition that life contains depths too profound for any single perspective to fully fathom. The story continues, as all true stories do, not with an ending, but with an invitation to participate in the ongoing creation of beauty, the perpetual renewal of hope, the endless dance between earth and heaven that finds its most perfect expression in moments of genuine wonder, authentic worship, and shared recognition of the mystery that makes all things possible. Rest now in that mystery, dear pilgrim of dreams, and let Hagia Sophia watch over your sleep as she has watched over the sleep of nations, as she will continue to watch until stars forget their courses and light itself finds rest. Her vigil is eternal, her welcome infinite, her gift to all who enter, whether in body or in spirit, the assurance that some things in this world are built to last forever, and that you, in your own small yet infinite way, are one of them.